Namaste, sisters and brothers. Today we continue with consciousness, especially evolution of consciousness. So far we have covered how our mental activities, the role of the mind, the manas, how it contributes towards the evolution of consciousness. Secondly, we covered the aspects of intellect, buddhi, how intellect or buddhi plays its part in evolution of consciousness. Today, we'll take up the third aspect, ego, ahankar, how ego or ahankar is playing its vital role in whether or not the expansion of evolution of consciousness occurs. Ego is often seen as the bad guy by spiritual practitioners of all traditions, but ego is also essential for our evolution. It is the active function of the mind, the doing, thinking function, and we need it in every aspect of daily life, even to have craving to evolve. It gives us our identity. Then where have we gone wrong? Let's see. In Hindi, multiple phases of ahankar or ego are discussed. Swabhiman, Garv, and Ghamand are some of the examples of phases, rather various phases of ahankar or ego. If you say, I am Ganesh, brother of Kumaresh, the great violinist duo, imagine what happens to your consciousness when you are not what you are saying. You see, ego manifests in many ways. For example, in a music concert, when suppose Shashank, the great flutist, is playing his flute, and it gives him so much of joy, and the audience reciprocates accordingly. But as an artist, he will not be happy unless he surpasses his previous performances. If I had my performance yesterday and today also I perform at the same level, I will not be happy. I like to surpass my yesterday's performance. The manifested ego makes me perform well, but to think that no one can play flute better than myself is not a welcoming manifestation of ego, that nobody is better in this whole city. I am the best. That is ahankar, which falls under the category of Ghamand, arrogance. Ego can be our best friend in helping us outperform our own past records if we are finely tuned within ourselves. If it is used wisely, like all other faculties, it serves us very well, like any other resource, but it is often misused, and this is what we commonly refer as being egotistical, arrogant. When ego is used for selfish purpose, we become arrogant and self-importance takes over. Whereas if we constantly refine the ego, consciousness develops very rapidly. What does it mean to refine the ego? How to? During our spiritual journey, as desires are dropped, we enjoy some level of freedom and joy. Haven't you seen it? We all have experienced. As we move further, there is this tug of war due to demand of absolute saranagati or anuprapanna. More and more of this anuprapanna, lesser will be the burden of ego. Now let me explain to you what this anuprapanna is all about. Anuprapanna, if you break this word down, anuprapanna, it has two parts. Anu means to follow. Prapanna means saranagati, surrender kind or submission with reverence. It is not a forceful or enforced level of submission. It, it is something that comes from within, from your heart, that I need to reverentially take Saranagati, the feet of the Lord, and follow it consciously. So what happens then under the circumstance when Lord is allowed to precede, then we will be completely rid of burden of my I-ness. This allows me to experience total bliss. Now, the burden of my I-ness, burden of ego is gone. So you'll have absolute bliss. Earlier, we were burdened with desires. That prevents us from being joyful. Later, it is our ego that burdens us and that prevents us from enjoying bliss. You see the difference? Desires preventing joyful state and ego preventing blissful state. As one moves further on this journey beyond Sahasradal Kamal, one is no longer enchanted by bliss. Since even bliss feels like a burden. It is at this point that one renounces the nectar of bliss. But often people, they are mesmerized by such Chit Anand state that one gets to experience while at this particular chakra, Sahasra Dal Kamal. It somehow feels that you have achieved. It epitomizes your journey, a blissful state. It is easier to renounce the thorny desires because it pains you that how can I be still so low to be diseased by all these desires. But it's quite a different matter altogether when it comes to renouncing sweet nectar of bliss. But as one develops more and more reverence, more and more love towards the Lord, Anuprapanna kicks in. And because of that, you seem to somehow sublimate your ego and it becomes a reality. All the sages of the world have valued this quality so highly that humility at any cost must be maintained. They insist that you must maintain this humility towards anyone we happen to be. My Guruji Maharaj, Pujya Babuji, in a very nice way of conveying this concept. He would say, that there is nothing wrong in thinking yourself to be great. You know what he said? That there is nothing wrong in thinking yourself to be great. But always remember, the other person in front of you is greater. Nothing wrong in thinking yourself to be great, but always remember that the person in front of you is greater. In this way, we can keep our ego in check. By refining the ego and becoming more and more sublime, humble, consciousness will expand infinitely. To the extent I am more and more humble, to that extent expansion of consciousness will happen. And more arrogance kicks in my heart where it becomes so heavy. Under the burden of this ego, I don't think consciousness, which is so refined, can expand at all. In fact, it will contract. And contraction of consciousness is also a problem. Imagine if a rock has the opportunity of becoming divine, and unfortunately, if human being with their selfish, greedy ideas, with their ego, allow their consciousness to contract, it will go towards that end, rocky end, solid end, cross end. Now, coming back to this idea of refinement of ego, we often wonder how am I supposed to arrive at refined state of consciousness by making use of ego. Heartfulness were practices, with pranahuti especially, when meditation, cleaning, and prayer are prescribed. They will all lead us towards this experiential expansion of consciousness. Now, amazing things happen. In our next session, I would like to take how this consciousness and Panchabhutas are interrelated. How the Panchabhuta qualities, either they can help us expand or they can contract our level of consciousness. We have two questions. This question is from Sri Arpit Tubeji from Indore. He asks, okay, you spoke of Sankalpa when you said, make a Sankalpa and meditate. What is this Sankalpa exactly? Do I have to keep coming back to it? Sankalpa can be taken as willful suggestion to yourself or a willful conscious prayer to Almighty that may this be so. If you're wishing someone, may you be happy. May your birthday be joyous. May your life be full of joy, health, and happiness. These are suggestions. But when we make these suggestions, which are simply verbal, but associate with humility and prayer, and offer it as prayer to Almighty, to me, it becomes very subtle kind of sankalpa, and it is always powerful and most potent. Now, do I have to repeat this sankalpa, which I make just before the meditation, that there is presence of divine light in my heart and on which I am meditating? I think we should not repeat such sankalpa again and again. Once is enough. It is like you enter in the room, you turn on the light once. You don't go on flipping. You understand, you don't go on flipping the switch. We have a second question from Sri Pankaj Guptaji Guwahati. You speak of yogic transmission that is present in heartfulness meditation. What exactly is that? Pranahuti, it is all about pranasya prana. Let me explain to you what this pranasya prana means. Just as our physical body requires nourishment, balanced diet, from this Annamaya kosha is supported. Likewise, Manomaya, Vijnanmaya, and Pranamaya kosha are supported. Various exercises, mental exercises, also through pranayama. But how are we supposed to support our causal body, the Atman, or soul? How do we nourish that? It is through this prana, Shiv prana, that nourishes our prana, our soul. Guide of capable order, a yogi of very high order, they are able to do this transmission of pranahuti. Ordinary individual, if he tries to transmit this prana, he will go on repeating oneself. But a person who is connected with infinity, with the source, it's easier for them. In short, it is this Pranasya Prana, Pranamukti, that enriches our soul and helps us go further into consciousness. It helps us dive deeper into our consciousness. It brings about a state of samadhi faster. It is like when you cannot walk on your own, when you are so disabled, you take a wheelchair or someone's help. Pranamukti is something like that. It carries our consciousness towards the divine. Thank you. Nice question.